Hello, everyone. Welcome to Google Assistant powered by containers, machine learning, and .NET on Google Cloud. That's a long title. But if I had to rename this session, I would probably say how to connect cool technologies together, because this is what this session is about. If you want the slides, this is my Twitter, and I already have a version of these slides there, so you can just get it from there. And at the end of my session, I'm going to have a GitHub page where I will also share the link for my demo that I'm going to show you, because we're going to go through a demo throughout the talk. So the demo is already on GitHub, it's already on open source and stuff like that, all right? OK, so before I start my talk, I want to make sure that things are working, because this is a demo-driven application, and I'm connected to some, not Wi-Fi, but some tethered device. So let's make sure that things work. What I'm going to do is this is my Google on Actions on Google simulator. So you can think of this as Google Home device that you're talking to or your phone. And this is the front end of my application. So first, when you deploy an application, a Google Home application, you choose a phrase to trigger your application. So you would say something like, if it's a shopping application, you would say, talk to my shopping application. And that would give the control from Google Assistant to your application. In this case, this is a test application that I haven't deployed yet, so we have to start with talk to my test app and see if that works. Hopefully the sound will work, but let's see. Talk to my test app. All right, the sound is not working, so tech people, can we check the sound? The sound connected to here is not working.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry? Try again. OK, let's try again. And the good thing about the simulator is that I can actually click on it, and it should do it again.
Sure. Here's the test version of my test app.
Thanks.
Hello from Google Home meets .NET Containers app.
All right, so this hello from Google Home meets .NET Containers app is from my application, so I know that the control is in my application now, which is great. I guess it's a good practice to start your talk to greet everyone, so I forgot to greet you, so I will let Google do that for me. Can you say hi to everyone?
Hello everyone, it's great to be here at DevFest in Prague.
All right, and then it's also good to introduce myself, right, because I didn't introduce myself. I always forget these things, but thank God I have this app. Can you please introduce me?
This is Mete Atamel from Google. He is a developer advocate for Google Cloud, based in London.
The only problem is my name is not Mete, it's Mete. I have to work on that part for this application. All right, so the app is working, which is a good sign. Now I want to talk to you about the app at the high level, and we'll get into details. So at the very high level, this is kind of like the high-level description of the app. We have our device. It can be a Google Home device. It can be a Google Assistant simulator. It can be your phone. So any device that has Google Assistant enabled can work. So you talk to the app. Google Assistant picks up your voice. And then at that point, Google Assistant decides whether it wants to handle what you said or whether it wants to pass that, what you said, what you requested to Dialogflow, right? For example, if you ask about weather or if you ask about stock, Google has that information, so Google Assistant will handle it directly. But if you already triggered to your application, then Google Assistant can pass the request to your application. In this case, normally you would use something called Actions on Google to extend Google Assistant, but I am using something called Dialogflow, which wraps Actions on Google. And I'll talk about what Dialogflow is and why I use that instead of Actions on Google. But my request goes to Dialogflow. In Dialogflow, it's the same kind of process. First, Dialogflow looks at the request and sees if it can handle that directly. If it can, it will respond back. But it can also make a call to some other place. In this case, the only requirement is that it needs to do HTTPS. So it needs to call an HTTPS endpoint. And that endpoint can live anywhere. So it can live on your own machine. It can live in the cloud. It can live in Google Cloud, Azure, wherever, as long as it's HTTPS. In my case, it's an ASP.NET Core application, containerized application running on Appengine Flex in Google Cloud. So it goes there, and then we did integration with Vision API for machine learning, BigQuery for big data analysis, and search, Google Search to search for images. So that's kind of our application. Just to give you the overview of this application, I got a Google Home device last Christmas, and I started using it, and I really like it because it's so easy to use. You can just talk to it, and it will respond to you with some information. And immediately I started thinking, can I actually program this to do what I want to do? That's when I ran into Dialogflow. My initial reaction was that, it should be kind of hard to do this because you are talking to a device, it has to understand what you said, it has to pick out the things from what you said, and it has to send a response back. So my initial reaction is that this couldn't be easy, but with Dialogflow it was actually really easy. It took me like half a day just to get a Hello World application working. And then after that I said, okay, can I connect this to the cloud and make it smarter? Because cloud has machine learning, cloud has big data, so can I make this application even better? And I thought that this would be difficult as well, but it wasn't. By creating this HTTPS endpoint, I got the request, and I could do whatever I want with it and send a response back. So that's how we kind of built this application, me and my coworker, Chris Bacon, who's also an engineer at Google. And now I want to take you through that journey, basically, what it takes to connect a conversational application to the cloud, and once you're in the cloud, what can you do with it? Like you can integrate with machine learning and big data and stuff like that. So I want to take you through that journey. So first, let's talk about conversational applications. So I use something called Dialogflow. Dialogflow, it's basically a framework to build conversational applications. And by conversational, I mean either text-based applications, like things like chatbots, or voice-driven applications, like the one that I'm going to show here. The good thing about Dialogflow is that it works on many platforms. So Google Assistant is the one that I use, but you can integrate with things like Skype, Twitter, Messenger, Slack. So it's a good platform to build an app once and deploy it to many different places. So if you have a chatbot, for example, it can work with Messenger and Slack and things like that. In this case, I'm just going to show you Google Assistant, but it's good to know that this platform actually supports a bunch of different platforms. It works on many devices, so Google Home, your phone, simulator, and many devices. And it works everywhere. So it's not a US-only service. It's not just Europe-only service. It works everywhere users are. And as I mentioned, when you want to extend an application for Google Assistant, so if you want to write an application for Google Assistant, you would normally use something called Actions on Google. Actions on Google, it's a library to build these applications, but it's very limited. In Actions on Google, you basically have a library to listen what user said and then take some actions depending on that. But it doesn't have that much intelligence built into it. Whereas in Dialogflow, there's already machine learning built into Dialogflow. What that means is that if we say something like this, book a flight from Los Angeles to Hawaii for less than $300, Dialogflow will recognize that, but it will also recognize the entities from what you said. So it will figure out that Los Angeles, it's a geo-city, so it's a city. Hawaii, it's a geo-state US, so it's a US state. And 300, it's an amount, it's a number, but it's also a currency, US dollars, right? So it will pick those entities from what the user said and give it to you in the request, and you can use those in your applications, basically, right? So because of this, and because it has a really intuitive UI to build your agents and to build your intents that I'm going to show, I definitely recommend people to use Dialogflow and not bother with Actions on Google, because it basically wraps everything Actions on Google do, and it gives you even more things like that. All right, so just to show you how Dialogflow works. So this is Dialogflow console. I will try to make this a little bit bigger. So when you start a project in Dialogflow, first you have to create an agent. And you can think of your agent as the project over your application. In this case, I have a couple of agents. So this is a Hello World agent, and this is an agent for my application. The agent has a description. You can set the time zone of your agent. You can choose which API the agent uses. You can specify which languages your agent recognizes. In this case, it's English, but multiple languages are supported. So I think there's like 15 languages that are supported, and they keep adding more. You can change the machine learning settings if you want. I haven't changed these, but if you are into machine learning and if you know the details, you can change them. And the good thing is that you can actually export and import your agent. So once you create your agent, you can export to a zip file, and you can give it to people, and they can import it into their project. And actually, if you go to the GitHub page for this project, you will see that I have my agent as a zip, and I tell you to import it in your project, and you can have the whole thing in your project. So once you have your agent, you have to tell your agent what it can do, right? And the way to do that is through something called intents. Intents basically match what the user said and what action you want Dialogflow to take. By default, there's two default agents. One is welcome agent. So when you say, talk to my application, it will get into this default welcome intent, and it will just respond like this: hello from Google Home, it's not my containers. So this is a default welcome intent that's handled directly within Dialogflow. So you can specify what triggers this intent here using the training phrases, and you can specify what the agent can say. It can say only one thing, or it can say a list of things, and in that case, it will pick one at random. So that's welcome intent. The other one is fallback intent. So if you say something that Dialogflow doesn't understand, then it will fall back to this intent. So for training phrases, there's no training phrases. So it's basically something that you said the Dialogflow doesn't understand. And then the response is, one of these. So it will say something like, can you say that again? Sorry, I didn't get that, things like that. And then, if you remember, at the beginning of the talk, I said, say hi to everyone. So that was a greeting.conference intent. So if you look at the training phrases, if I say things like say hi, greet people, say hi to everyone, any of these phrases, it will trigger this, and it will say, hello everyone, it's great to be here at DevFest in Prague. So it's very easy. You just type in what you want Dialogflow to say, and it will say it. By the way, these are training phrases, so they're not the full list. So as long as you say something similar to these phrases, it will still trigger this intent. So it doesn't have to be the full list. It's just giving Dialogflow some examples of what kind of things can trigger this intent. All right? And the last one is the introduction part. When I say, can you introduce me, or please introduce me, then it will just talk about me, basically. Right? So this is Dialogflow in a nutshell, and it's very easy, as you can see. You just specify the training phrases, and then your responses within Dialogflow, and it just responds back with what you want to respond back with. So at this point, I started thinking, OK, this is really easy. How can I make this better? How can I connect this to the cloud and use the power of cloud in this application? So that's the next part of my talk. And when you want to run code in the cloud, I just want to cover that briefly, and then we'll go back to our application and take a look at it. So when you want to run code in Google Cloud, this is kind of the spectrum that you have. These are the choices that you have in Google Cloud. On one hand, you have Compute Engine. This is basically virtual machines running in the cloud, either Linux-based or Windows-based virtual machines, where you specify the CPU and the memory and the storage that you want, and you get the virtual machine. It's your machine. You install whatever you want on it. It's highly customizable in the sense that you can pick and choose what kind of hardware, like what kind of CPU and memory you want. But also, it's not managed, meaning that anything you install on that machine, it's your responsibility to keep it up to date, and you need to care about the fact that there's a machine behind this, right? So that's Compute Engine. On the other hand, we have Cloud Functions. The idea of Cloud Functions is similar to like AWS Lambda. You write a Node.js or Python or Go function, you deploy it, but you don't care where it's running, you don't care how it's scaled. All you care is that this is my code, it gets called by a certain trigger, and then the code will execute, and then when no one is using it, then you don't pay for it, right? So it's very highly managed, but at the same time, it's not customizable, meaning you don't get to choose anything. You just write your code, and that code just gets executed, and that's it. And then somewhere in the middle, we have Appengine and Kubernetes Engine. These are basically for apps that are more than functions, and they are mostly for containerized applications. So if you have a containerized application, you get to choose where to run it. You can run it on Appengine, or you can, if you've made the switch to Kubernetes, you can also run it on Kubernetes Engine. Appengine is the easiest way to run your application. The whole idea of Appengine is that you just specify your Docker file, and you just tell Appengine, this is the definition of my container. Take this container, just run it, but I don't care where it's running. I don't care how you scale it. Just make sure that it's running. And that's what happens. By default, you get auto-scaling, as I mentioned, but you also get dashboards. You get versions of your application. So every time you deploy your application, you get a new version. You get traffic splitting. So if you want to deploy 2 versions of your application, you can split the traffic between them. So you get all these nice features for free by just deploying to Appengine. But if you want to do Kubernetes, because Kubernetes now is the de facto standard in running containerized clusters, you can use that as well. There's something called Kubernetes Engine in Google Cloud, which is basically a Kubernetes as a service. So you just with a single command, you get a Kubernetes cluster, and then you can just use kubectl to deploy your containers to Kubernetes. So in this case, I could have chosen both because my application is an ASP.NET Core containerized application, so it can run both on Kubernetes or Appengine. So let's go back to our application and ask where it is running. Where are you running?
I run on this device. I can help you find fun running routes.
OK, the problem is it dropped out on my application, so that's why now Google Assistant is responding. So now I'm going to say, talk to my test app to get into my application.
All right, getting the test version of my test app.
Hello from Google Home meets .NET Containers app.
So now let's try again. Where are you running?
Running on Google App Engine. Project ID is Home meets .NET Containers.
So what happened is that when I said, where are you running, it went to an intent in Dialogflow, and Dialogflow made a call to the Google Cloud. It figured, and then that endpoint made a call to a Google Cloud library, API, and it figured out it's running on Appengine, and then it responded back to Dialogflow saying, I'm running on Appengine, and this is my project ID. But it also displayed a message in the web front end. So it sent a response back to Dialogflow, and it also displayed it in the web page, right? So we made the connection to the cloud, which at this point, it was exciting for me because it was good to make this connection. And I just want to show you the code and the intents to make this happen. So first, let's look at the Dialogflow console. So in here, there's an intent called platform.describe. And in here, if you say things like, what platform are you running on? Where are you executing? It will trigger this intent. And then the response, if you look at the response, it's empty. There's no response because we have this thing here, fulfillment. I don't know if you can see it, but basically there's a check here that says enable webhook call for this intent. What this says is that it says to Dialogflow, when you get into this intent, don't bother to answer, just pass it on to this webhook that I define. And that webhook is defined under fulfillment. So if you look at web fulfillment, this is my Appengine endpoint, Appengine application, and /conversation is the endpoint that will handle my requests coming from Dialogflow, right? So that's where you define it. By the way, if you are a Firebase person, you can also define your function here in Node.js, and you can deploy it right from here. So if you hit save, this will save your function on a Cloud Functions running on Google Cloud and deploy it there as well. So it's an easy way to get started. But the reason I didn't do this is that, first of all, I'm not a Node.js person. I am a C# Java kind of person. So I wanted to write in C# and Java. And secondly, this enables you to write within the browser, which is easy. But at the same time, when you have multiple handlers for multiple intents, it gets quite messy. So you don't want to do it from the browser. You actually want to do it in separate classes and things like that. So that's why I chose not to do it here. But it's an option to get started here. All right, so this goes to our Appengine application. So at this point, we can look at the code. And this code, by the way, it's on GitHub, so you can take a look at it as well. I have a controller called Conversation Controller. This is the main class that handles the conversation calls from Dialogflow. And if you look at it here, the first thing that you'll realize is that it's using this NuGet package. Oh, sorry, not this one. Oh, maybe it's not here. It's not here yet. But it will get into this conversation call, and it will get the HTTP request, and it will pass that request to something called Dialogflow app. So Dialogflow app is another class. If you look at here, now this class uses the Dialogflow NuGet package. That's on NuGet that you can use in your .NET applications. And then it will get in here. It will get the HTTP request. And then what happens here is that we basically extract a webhook request out of it. So what that means is that we take the body of the HTTP request, and we extract the Dialogflow request out of it, right? And in this request, we have things like intent names, the session ID. So every Dialogflow request has a session ID. So we get the session ID. And at this point, it's either a new user that just came to our application, which means we need to create a conversation for that user, or it's an existing user that we're already talking to. So this method basically gets the session ID and either creates a new conversation or gets an existing conversation. But either way, we have a conversation, then we'll pass in the request to this conversation object. So if you look at the conversation object, the conversation object gets a webhook request. So at this point, we're dealing with Dialogflow requests. And what we do is we get the intent name from the request, and then we find a handler from the intent name. If you look at the find handler method, it's basically this code. But just to explain you in a nutshell, what we do is that we get the intent name, and then if you look at one of the intent handlers, the platform describe, for example, this is the handler that gets called when I say, where are you running? At the top of this class, there is this intent tag that has platform.describe. So this intent tag has the same name, platform.describe, as the intent name in Dialogflow. So by having these matching names, platform.describe, I match the intent in Dialogflow with a handler on the server, right? That's how we do the matching. So it eventually goes into this method to Dialogflow requests, and then we make a call to Google Cloud, getting the platform that we are running, and then we get the description that we are running in Appengine, and the project ID is so-and-so. And then I do two things. First, I do Dialogflow show that will show the information in the web frontend that I just showed you, right? And then I return a webhook response. So webhook response is the response that you send back to Dialogflow. And in here, I'm saying fulfillment text equals this description. So fulfillment text is basically what you want Dialogflow to say, right? So I'm just passing what I want it to say right here. So by just returning a webhook response with fulfillment text, I'm making Dialogflow talk whatever I want, which is nice. So that's the connection, right? Dialogflow intent makes a call to the webhook. Webhook gets the request, looks at the HTTP request body, extracts the Dialogflow request out of it, and from there we find a handler in our list of handlers, and then it goes in here, and then from there we just return a webhook response, and that's the way it is, right? So it's not too complicated. There's a lot of steps, but it's not too complicated. All right, so at this point we made the connection to the cloud on Appengine, which is nice. And now once you're in the cloud, the possibilities are endless. You can do pretty much whatever you want. So me and my coworker, Chris, we said, OK, what can we do? Why don't we do some machine learning, because it's kind of cool nowadays? And why don't we do big data, because we can use all this big data to make our app smarter. So first we started with machine learning. And when you start with machine learning, you basically need to make a choice of how you want to use machine learning in your applications. And that choice, I call it the easy way and the hard way. The easy way is that you don't really deal with machine learning yourself directly. You let someone else gather data, train a model, and give you an API, and you just consume their model, right? So that's using the pre-trained model approach. And if you can do that, if these models work for you, then it's definitely the easiest way to use machine learning, and that's what we did in our application. But in some cases, the model that's given to you is not doing exactly what you want. So you need to actually create your own custom models. So you usually use something like TensorFlow, get your own data, train a model, and then find a way to expose that on Google Cloud using Cloud Machine Learning Engine. You can do that as well, and sometimes you have to do that, but it's not the path that we took because we wanted to do something quickly. Thankfully, in Google Cloud, there's all these machine learning APIs. These are basically trained models, models that are trained by Google, and then Google gives us these APIs to call to use these models. So there's translation API for language translation, there's speech-to-text, text-to-speech APIs, there's vision API to detect images and get information out of images, and things like that, right? So what we did is we basically said, OK, why don't we do some integration with Google Search to search for images, and then use Vision API to actually detect those images and see what kind of images they are, right? So let me show you what we did instead of talking about it. So first, I'm going to put my application into what I call Vision API mode by saying, I want to talk to Vision API.
Here's what I found.
All right, so it's out of my app again, so I have to click it here again.
OK, let's get the test version of my test app.
Hello from Google Home meets .NET Containers app.
I want to use Vision API.
Okay, you can ask Vision API to search for images first. What do you want to search for?
All right, so let's try Prague. Search for images of Prague.
Found some pictures of Prague. Now, select a picture.
So you use Google search to pull these images. It's a little bit hard to see, but let's pick, that's a bridge, so let's pick or maybe this one looks better. So let's say, select picture 7.
Picture 7 selected. You can describe, show landmarks, or ask whether the image is safe.
So in Vision API, you can pass in an image, and it gives you labels about that image. So that's the describe the image part. You can also pass in an image, and it tells you if there's a landmark in that image. So that's landmark detection. And you can also pass in an image, and it will tell you whether that image is safe. So whether that image is an adult image or a violent image, so you can detect whether that image is safe or not. So let's try to get labels out of this image. Can you describe this image?
This picture is labeled landmark, reflection, sky, cityscape, bridge, and city.
Yeah, so these are the labels that it could extract from this image. I think this is a famous bridge, right, in Prague. So let's see if Vision API can detect that. Is there a landmark in this picture?
This picture contains Charles Bridge.
Is that right? I guess. OK, so it's working. And finally, we can do the safety check. Is the picture safe?
Let's see. This picture is fine.
Right, so Vision API is telling us that this picture is safe. So just to show you the code for this, first, let's go to Dialogflow, and we always start with the intent. One thing that you realize is that we'll have something called visual.intro, and the training phrases are, I want to search for images, I want to use Vision API, or let's use Vision API. So when I say this, what happens is that it just responds with this, OK, you can use Vision API. So it basically tells the user what you can do with Vision API. But it also sets a context. So at the top, there's input context and output context. Input context is basically, if it's set, the intent will only be called when you're in that context, right? So in this case, there is no input context, meaning this will be called no matter what. And then the output context is the context that will be set once you exit this intent. So once we get into this intent and we finish it, it will set this vision context. So our application will be in vision mode, basically. And this is important because if you look at other intents, vision.search, this is when we search for images. At the top, there's a vision intent as input context, right? So this will only be called if you are already in vision mode, right? So that way you can basically control which intent gets called in what mode, right? In this case, only vision context will trigger this intent. And then when you look at the training phrases for vision search, I'm just saying, dog pictures, please. Find some pictures of dogs. I'm not talking about any city, actually. I'm just talking about dogs. And the reason is that, so these are the training phrases, and then I'm also marking marking one thing in the sentence, and extracting that as entity. In this case, the entity type is sys.any, meaning this can be anything. So it can be a dog, it can be a city, it can be anything, right? And I'm saying to Dialogflow, pick this up and give me this as search term. And our code will get this as search term, and we'll use that as search term, right? And this is a required entity, so that's what the check is here. And if the user doesn't provide it, so if you say something like, let's see some pictures all, and don't say anything, then Dialogflow will say, what do you want to search for? So it will basically ask the user to provide that information, which is nice. So once we get in here, if you look at the code, the intents, and under vision, there's vision search. It will eventually get here. So we'll get the request from Dialogflow. And then we'll extract the search term, because Dialogflow already picked the search term for us, and we'll get the search term, and the rest of the code is basically just doing a search on Google using custom search, and then once we find the images, we just say, found some pictures, oh, search term, let's select the picture, right? So that's how you do it. And then to make the call to Vision API, there's vision.describe. So in this intent handler, I'm using the Vision API NuGet package. And then once it gets here, we create a Vision client. So that's the client that I'm going to use to talk to Vision API. And all I'm doing is I'm calling detect labels async and passing the image URL. So I'm just saying, this is my image. Can you please extract the labels out of this image? And Vision API will take the image, uses machine learning model that it already has. It will extract the labels. I get the labels back, and I will just order them with some, because it has some score, so I pick the best labels with the highest score. And then I just say, OK, this picture is labeled, blah, 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 right? So with a single call, I did machine learning. I got all the information from the image, thanks to Vision API. And if you look at the landmark detection, it's pretty much the same code, except I get a Vision client, but then I call detect landmarks async, so that detects the landmarks in my picture. OK? So that was pretty easy. The next thing that we wanted to do was big data. Anyone knows about BigQuery or used BigQuery before? A couple people. So BigQuery is Google's massively parallel data warehousing solution. And the idea of BigQuery is that you point your data to it, it ingests the data, it has lots of storage behind it, and it has lots of compute behind it. And you can run SQL statements against your data, but it runs really, really fast. So you can search gigabytes or terabytes of data within seconds or minutes instead of hours. And the whole thing is it's managed. So you don't have to worry about machines. You don't have to worry about clusters. You just run your query and pay for what you scanned. But everything else is pretty much managed for you. And the good thing about BigQuery is that it has many public data sets. For example, everything that happens on GitHub is ingested into BigQuery, I think, on a daily basis. So you can search for things on GitHub. You can search for things on Hacker News. You can search for things on Reddit. So there's a lot of public data sets. So we wanted to use some of those data sets in our application and answer some questions, so make our application smarter, basically, using the data given to us by BigQuery. So to show you what we did, first I will start with, by the way, I can also type the things in here in the simulator, which is nice. So I want to say I want to use BigQuery. OK, it keeps dropping out of my application because the Wi-Fi is not that great, but let's try again.
OK, let's get the test version of my test app.
Hello from Google Home meets .NET Containers app.
So I want to use BigQuery.
OK, you can ask BigQuery about top hacker news or global temperatures on a certain day.
So as I mentioned, all the hacker news are being ingested into BigQuery in a public data set. And also, all the temperatures of all countries of pretty much all years are ingested in a public data set as well. There's a public data set for it as well. So that's what we integrated here. So let's start with hacker news. For example, what was top hacker news on May 1st, 2018? Now it's generating the SQL statement to do that. And it's running it live.
Scanned 709 megabytes in 4.3 seconds. The top title on Hacker News was titled, Amazon Threatens to Suspend Signal's Oz account over censorship circumvention.
Yeah, so what happened here is that we basically converted this, like what I said, to a SQL statement. We replaced the date with what I said, May 1st. We are running against the public data set of BigQuery Hacker News. And then once we run it, we have some stats about it, and we list first top 10 using BigQuery. And let's try the global temperature data set as well. What was the hottest temperature in Czech Republic in 2016? Now this time the query is a little bit more complicated.
Scanned 5,287 megabytes in 3.6 seconds. The hottest temperature in Czech Republic in the year 2016 was 32.3 degrees Celsius at the KUNOVICE monitoring
It
station.
doesn't know Czech that much, yeah. But you get the idea, basically, how to convert voice to SQL statements and run it and display or talk about it. I only have 5 minutes, but I want to quickly show you the intents for this one. So if you come back here. So there's BigQuery intro again that sets the BigQuery context. And then after that, if you look at the Hacker News, the cool thing is that I'm only giving like 3 examples. What was on Hacker News yesterday, or what was on Hacker News on May 1st, 2018. And then the entity in this case is not sys_any, it's sys.date. So Dialogflow will try to pick a date from what you said. And if you didn't provide the date, it will say which date. It will ask you for that. And then once we have the date, we'll pass that to BigQuery and we'll run it. If you look at the other one, the global temperatures, it's a little bit more complicated. But again, I'm only providing 4 examples. And in here, I'm saying, in 2015, what was the hottest temperature in France? Or in France, what was the lowest temperature in 2015? So I have 3 entities that I'm picking up. The first one, it's a country. So I mark this as country. And it has to be a country. So if you say, what was the hottest temperature in Paris, it will tell you which country, because it's looking for a country. The date is a system date, so it will look for a date. And then hottest or coldest, it's a custom entity, right? It's an entity that I defined. And if you look at the entities, under here, I have an entity called hottest or coldest. And then it can be coldest, which can be coldest or lowest. Or it can be hottest, which can be hottest or highest, right? So I define what those are. And that's it. I just provide some examples, and Dialogflow does all the work for me to get the entities and pass it to me. And if you look at the code here, just to show you briefly, I don't have that much time, but this is Hacker News. In Hacker News, we just get a date. So this date is given to us by Dialogflow. And then all I do is I create a BigQuery client. Then I generate, I get a table. So from my public data sets, get the Hacker News table. I have the SQL statement from there, and then I pass in my parameter of the date, and then I run the query, and I show the query, and I return a response, right? I can't spend too much time on it, but all the code is on GitHub if you want to take a look at it. All right. That's great. And in the last 2 minutes of my talk, I want to talk about Stackdriver. Anyone knows about Stackdriver? OK, you're the only one. But Stackdriver is Google Cloud's monitoring, logging, debugging, error reporting, tracing tool. So anything that gets logged in your application goes to Stackdriver logging. Any exceptions that you throw that's not caught is caught by error reporting. Any traces, any HTTP calls that you make gets traced, and you can look at them. And for me, the most favorite part is debugging. So you can actually debug live production code using Stackdriver debugging. So just quickly, I want to show you how we have this. First, to enable Stackdriver in your application, you need to do a couple of things. In your app, so in my program.cs, when I start my app, I just say use Google Diagnostic and pass in my project ID, service name, and version, so that enables Stackdriver. I also, in my Docker file, I say start debugger.sh. I add that at the beginning of my app. That way, the debugger also starts. So by having these 2 things, I have the debugger working and the rest of Stackdriver working. So once I have that, what I have is that, where is it? Sorry. So this is Google Cloud Console. And if you look at Stackdriver, so the logging is not that interesting, but the tracing is kind of interesting. So these are all the HTTP calls that my application makes. I have a long poll endpoint, but I want to look at the conversation. So this is the, right here. So this conversation endpoint, it's the endpoint that's being called by Dialogflow. So I can see that the endpoint is being called, that calls Dialogflow app, that calls BigQuery, right? So I can see where the time is being spent. If you look at the error reporting, so in my application, there's some timeouts that I didn't actually fix on purpose. So I can see that there has been some timeout exceptions. I can click on it, and then I can see how often they've been happening. I can link to an issue if I want to, and even if I want to, I can make this to call someone or to email someone. And I can even see where the timeout is being happening, so I can see the stack trace as well. But the most impressive part is debugging. And I just want to show you in the last 30 seconds. So what you can do with debugging, and anyone who has done production debugging knows how hard it is to debug an issue in production, right? If it doesn't happen locally, trying to debug it in production is very difficult. But what you can do in Stackdriver is that you can point your code on GitHub, like I did here, that pulls the code in your browser. It doesn't pull it in Google Cloud, it pulls it in the browser. And then once you have your code, you can, this is the vision search handler. So this is the code that gets called when you search for an image. Let's say that there's a problem with search term. So when I search a term, maybe there's something wrong there. What I can do is I can put a breakpoint here. Now it's waiting for this to be hit. So it's waiting for the snapshot to be hit. And when I talk to my application, when it gets here, it will take a snapshot of the state, but it won't stop my application. So I just want to test this out, and I will finish in like 2 minutes. So let's go back here. And then I say, I want to use Vision API.
Here are some results, starting with one from Google.
Go to my test app.
All right, getting the test version of my test app.
Use Vision API.
Okay, you can ask Vision API to search for images first.
This time,
What
let's
do
say
you want
London.
to search for?
Okay, ready? We go, and then let's go back to the console. Let's wait. Hopefully it works. Waiting, waiting, waiting. And it's live. This is all live. There you go.
Found some
it hit,
pictures of London.
and then I can see that
Now,
search term is
select a
London. I can
picture.
see the stack trace, and I can, if there's an issue, hopefully this will help you with the issue. All right? So that's all I have. If you want the code, it's on GitHub. If you want the slides, it's on my Twitter. We don't have time for questions, but I'm going to be around. So if you have questions, just find me around here. And thanks very much.